According to the Center on Reinventing Public Education, about 25% of the nation's schools have gone to full remote learning, meaning children at those schools are not only missing out on time with their friends, but many are lacking the tools to learn remotely. Furthermore, in an article titled "Distance Learning Makes It Harder for Kids to Exercise, Especially in Low-Income Communities," researchers at Johns Hopkins University say the pandemic is, quote, exacerbating health disparities among children and having significant impacts on their physical, social, and cognitive development. Joining me now is Katelyn Esmonde. She's a Hecht Levi Fellow at the Johns Hopkins Berman Institute and the co-author of that article, which was published on the academic site, theconversation.com. Thank you so much for being with us, Katelyn. What are some of the physical activity opportunities that come with in-person learning that are potentially being missed now during the pandemic?
Hi, thank you so much for having me on tonight to talk about this. There are a lot of ways that schools promote physical activity in children. One can just be as simple as getting to school, where kids might be walking either to school or to the bus to get there. They also have recess, which often involves a lot of active play. Physical education is another place where kids are often running around and getting some of those 60 minutes of physical activity per day that they should be getting. And schools also can offer opportunities for sports or intramural activities. So there are a lot of ways that physical activity just gets built into the day in school that is not replicated with remote learning.
And Katelyn, remind us, why is physical activity so important for children especially?
There are a lot of reasons that physical activity is great for everybody, especially children. The physical benefits certainly come to mind, where being physically active makes children less likely to develop chronic diseases, including as adults. We think about the mental health benefits as well, and the social benefits, where potentially being on a sports team can provide a lot of good things to children. But one of the most important things is that being physically active is fun. I think so many of us have had great experiences playing on teams or just running until we're exhausted. And especially in a pandemic where children are often sitting in front of a screen for hours, I think they really benefit from being able to move their bodies.
Yeah, I mean, I know I feel better just getting up and walking around after staring at a screen for so long. Will you talk about, Katelyn, this being more than a public health issue? How does fairness actually factor into this bigger picture?
Well, this pandemic in so many ways has highlighted the way that inequality shapes American society. So all kids are affected by school closures when they're subject to them, but some kids are missing out even more. Now, as you pointed out, they may be less likely to have access to the tools they need to learn in the classroom. But also, children of color and children in underserved communities, they were more likely to rely on their school for those physical activity opportunities. Their neighborhoods may not provide many opportunities. They may not have their own backyard that they can play in. And the streets that they live on, they may not be especially promoting of physical activity. They may not be close to parks or trails. And they also are more likely to have less resources to join sports teams or do other physical activities like going and playing tennis. And so, much like so many aspects of this pandemic, where those in under-resourced communities are most likely to get sick and they're most likely to bear the burden of the pandemic, we're seeing this with physical activity too.
So if that's the case, Katelyn, what are some opportunities that are available to most children, regardless of their family's socioeconomic background? And how can parents prioritize physical activity when there really is just so much going on in a lot of people's lives?
Yeah, parents are clearly being spread very thin. They have become teachers in this pandemic, and I think it's difficult for them to become physical educators as well. So I think parents should be prioritizing physical activity when it's possible. But I think communities need to step up as well and try to ensure that resources that are already in the community, like schoolyards, are being used so that children are able to get in their physical activity who lack private spaces like backyards. But then also in areas, in urban areas primarily, a lot has been done to try to promote more use of public space for people who don't have private spaces. And so I think that children need to be prioritized here as well. And public spaces need to be opened up to encourage active play. And finally, another thing that particularly could affect kids in underserved communities is that winter is coming. And in order to play outside in the winter, you need a coat and you need mittens. And a lot of kids don't have access to these. So communities also need to step up in this way and try to ensure that children have enough food and warm clothing so that they can be outside as the temperatures drop.
Really important points. Katelyn Esmonde. Katelyn, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.